These companies have these great products, but people don't care about your product. They care about their problem. Find the change in the world. So what has changed in the world that makes your product necessary? And start with, okay, this is the shift. We notice this.
Hi, everyone. This is Rebecca at Close.io. Welcome to another episode of the Women in Sales series, where we find out how they grow and thrive both personally and professionally. In this episode, we are speaking with Danielle Diamond, a content creator at User Interviews and the director of marketing at Rebel Motion. Danielle, it's so good to have you here today. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Can you tell us a sentence about User Interviews and about Rebel Motion?
Yeah, so User Interviews is the user research system. It's for teams of any size, and it basically makes it faster, and it helps you make better, faster product decisions with seamless participant recruitment management. So basically, user researchers, they need participants and prospective customers and current customers to give feedback on products. So User Interviews is like the one-stop shop and a platform for you to recruit participants and to really get the feedback that you need to build better products.
Great. And tell us about Rebel Motion. Yeah,
so Rebel Motion is a full production agency, and we help brands tell their stories. We help brands tell their stories. We do narrative work too on the side, but mostly we're here to help make sure that brands get their best stories told.
Those both sound like amazing companies to work for. Mm-hmm. So Danielle is also a screenwriter for Screen Power, and she was previously a conversational marketer of video at Drift. She's had numerous experiences in film production and marketing. She graduated from Boston University with a bachelor's degree in film and television. Danielle, what got you interested in filmmaking and storytelling?
Yes, that's always an interesting question. So there were kind of two things. The first was always that I loved computers. So I would spend my weekends as a kid at the Apple store, like the nerd that I am, and I would train there in like all the pro video editing software. I learned how to edit and color correct and do visual effects, motion graphics, that type of thing. And I had some trainers that would like give me these little projects, and I would film it and like come back to them the next week with the completed project. But at the time, I did not realize that what I was doing was filmmaking. I thought it was just computers, and I thought that I loved it mostly because I loved software and I loved puzzles and I loved playing with computers. Then on the flip side, I've been doing theater since I was 4, and it's one of the most important parts of my life. So long story short, I ended up getting involved with some New York City-based filmmakers in high school, so a while ago. But I got in on the acting end, and while I was working on the production, I ended up helping out with producing, and then I was like, oh, I also video edit it, and then I kind of gave it a shot accidentally, and right as I was going into college, I was ready set to be a vocal performance major, did all the college auditions and everything. Last minute, called up BU and said, hey, I think I want to switch to film and television. Can I do that? They said, sure, and that was history. And then that's how I got into filmmaking and storytelling, and I just kept growing from there.
What made you decide to do that last minute switch?
So a few things. I kind of realized that I could continue to pursue voice and acting through other outlets, and I can continue to get training without getting the full degree. But I felt like I would get bored if that was the only thing that I did. And I felt like you get really the fuller scope of storytelling, and there was so much more room to learn and to grow as a film major. And so I really wanted to just take that chance and see what I can do with this new exciting medium.
That sounds like a pretty smart and strategic last minute pivot. And we do want to come back to your past and present experience in filmmaking. But first, I want to ask how you decided to go from filmmaking to sales and marketing, and just, in the essence of storytelling, which, I think is such a captivating part of your story, is, how do you think storytelling has influenced the way that you tell stories through sales and through marketing conversations?
Oh yeah, so I personally am of the belief, I didn't realize this until I started doing it, that sales and marketing is storytelling. It's screenwriting, and I think the more you can apply the principles of screenwriting to like either your pitch decks or to even just talking to customers, the better response you'll get. It's really about connecting with people, and so they're kind of one and the same. And one of the reasons why I decided professionally that I wanted to really jump into the sales and marketing industry and grow as a professional in that space is because I didn't like the culture on film sets. It's very, I think the film sets have a lot to learn from the way great businesses are run. And that's something that I learned. Businesses are run, and film sets don't have great leadership. It's very male dominated. There's a lot of yelling, which I don't think is the most effective way to get people to do the best work possible. And in film, things are bound to go wrong. Nothing ever goes exactly as planned on set. And I found that there was a lot of people that just couldn't take the stress. I personally am like, I live for that. I live for things going wrong and having to figure out
Chaos.
the pieces of the puzzle. But part of the problem with film sets is, for some reason, they insist on having far more people than you need. And I've heard lots of directors talk about this too, is that they have like all these like hundreds of people on set, and it actually gets in the way of creating the best product possible. And in the sales and marketing space, I felt like I was able to grow as a leader and learn more in that space, and affect people personally more on an individual level, just talking to people every day. And also, as part of the marketing side of it, there was a lot of content creation is like the new marketing. Like, everything is about content. And so I felt like I had so much creative freedom and so much more leeway to have fun on these like more lower budget, fun branded content videos that I was making.
What elements of storytelling do you think, somebody that doesn't have your filmmaking background can apply and just infuse a bit of creativity to the day-to-day, especially with something that is very day-to-day and performance-driven like sales?
Yeah, so I was talking actually to Andy Raskin about this a while ago at Drift's Hypergrowth Conference. And basically there's a storytelling structure that makes it so easy. The first thing is always introduce, see, here's the thing is people, I'm sure every company, all these companies have these great products, but people don't care about your product. They care about their problem. Always start with the problem and start with the why. So my why is always find the change in the world. So what has changed in the world that makes your product necessary? And start with, okay, this is the shift. We notice this shift. And then say that, and make it clear that there's going to be winners and losers too. So the companies that weren't keeping up with this change in the world, they're dying out. Their sales are plummeting, things like that. And then from that point on, say, but here are some solutions onto how you can be a winner in this new shift. And then kind of tease the promised land. And then at the very, very end, reveal that it's your product that can do that. But mostly my main thing is just focus on the problem. It's all about the problem and the conflict.
And that's what drives so much, I guess, of the interest and the development in a great film.
Yeah, it's that type of structure is taken directly from the best screenwriting books. It's from The Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell.
Right.
Those sort of things that probably people have learned about in their like high school English classes.
Right.
If they look back on that, it's all storytelling. It's a fascinating art.
And I think about why, business reporting has gotten more fascinating and become more real time as we look at startups, because we are so drawn to archetypes. And when you see the rise and fall, the successes and failures of a company, it's almost like looking at a character in a movie, like the protagonist.
Exactly.
In this crazy, chaotic world.
And our customers are the protagonist in this crazy, chaotic world. And we have to make them feel that way. They are of that level of importance. They are Hamlet.
That's beautiful. And that's a great, great tactic. Thank you so much for sharing that framework with us. And how did you land the role at Drift? What was your first contact, or how did you get your way from the creative industry into selling technology?
So that was just the best accident of my life, is what that was. I was applying for a bunch of different like internships and jobs and positions in the film and television industry, except for the problem with that is they were all in San Francisco, LA, or New York, and none of them pay at first. And I unfortunately was not in a position to be doing that. So I was looking around at other ways to have some sort of creative experience, and learn and grow in a creative setting. And Drift had this paid position. It looked really interesting. I went on their website. I was always, like I said, always interested in tech and software. So it wasn't like out of the blue for me to jump into this. It was something I had an interest in. I contacted Amy Ahrens, who was the lead video marketer at the time, who now she's actually the creative director at Notarize. And I got along so well with Amy. We really hit it off, and then we just started working together, and that was it. I just ended up spending the entire year at Drift. I like kind of put school to the side my senior year and just went all out and spent my time at Drift. And I learned so much there with Amy Ahrens, who is and will always be one of my greatest like role models and mentors. Same with David Cancel and Dave Gerhardt, the CEO and VP of marketing there. They're just absolutely brilliant, and I learned so much from them, and I could not be more grateful.
We love everyone at Drift,
yeah,
those names included. So would you say that was your first official sales or marketing position, and that prior to that you hadn't had like a traditional business type of role?
So yes and no. I at the time was running BU's theater production company. At the time, I did not realize that what I was doing was leadership, sales, and marketing in a sense, because we had to sell tickets, we had to create content to get people to come see the shows. I didn't think much of it. I knew that I loved creating the content. I just didn't know that's what it was. I also did work at BU's marketing department, and made their like videos that they put on their homepage and stuff. But there's a lot of bureaucracy in institutions, so there wasn't a lot of marketing strategy necessarily. It was more create this content. Okay, I'll do it. But this was my first experience in a more like traditional business setting. And I loved every second of it. And I think that there's so much that every industry can learn from the way great leaders run in the business world.
How were you able to vouch for yourself with a lack of traditional business experience? What do you think got you hired? What do you think the people at Drift saw in you and picked you and wanted you on their side?
So I talked to them a little bit about this. I was also curious.
Excellent. That's what every good sales and marketing professional does, right? You figure out why your audience converted. You get their direct feedback.
No, I wanted to know why. I was really curious. And basically, and this is one of the most brilliant things I think they do about hiring too, is that Drift is not necessarily they weren't necessarily looking for someone who had the most traditional experience on their resume. They were looking for someone who had a passion for what they were doing. And I had a passion for storytelling. I had a passion for creating content, and they were looking for someone who had those two passions. And I think that's what they kind of saw in me, and that's why I got the chance to work there and create the things I did.
That's some amazing advice for a lateral shift or just like a career move for anybody out there that is looking to switch fields.
Mm-hmm. Plus, like, the thing is, you can go into an interview and talk about a million traditional positions that you have, but it's easy to tell when that spark gets into someone's eyes, right? And when you can see, okay, this is what makes this person tick. You could have one person that's had 10 marketing jobs, but if there's no passion there, they might not be the best hire. As opposed to, you could have someone that's really evergreen, but you see a spark there, and that person is the one that's going to grow and that's going to learn and really feel passion for the mission that you're doing. And that's one of the biggest hiring lessons I learned from there too. I learned so much there.
And not only that, but, in, I guess, a stack of resumes, when they do come across your resume, they'll say, who is this person? You stand out in a way, and it kind of piques their interest, and it makes them think, or what I would think is, well, this person clearly has no traditional experience. So what is it about them that, I'm not seeing right off the bat? What is it about them that made them apply, that made them believe that they would have a worthwhile shot at this? And that piques my curiosity. It draws me in and it makes me want to know, where this person came from.
Yeah, exactly.
So why did you decide to work remotely? And I guess to preface that, if you were listening to this and you were wondering if you know heard me correctly in introducing Danielle, so yes, she is currently working with 2 or 3 different companies at the time. So she does have this really cool setup. You didn't hear it incorrectly if you thought I had mentioned several companies. What led to this sort of setup, and how were you able to get that started, and how has it worked for you?
Yeah, so this is my home office. This is where I live. It's also where I work, and I love it. So basically, I wanted to stay at Drift. I loved Drift, but I needed a change in location. And when it came down to it, I had to kind of make a choice about what would be best for me personally as a human being. Family and relationships are something that's really important to me. I wanted to be closer to a bunch of my peers in New York. My partner got a great job at Accenture, and I couldn't let him turn down that opportunity. And it just kind of, everything worked out. And Philadelphia seemed to be the place that I ended up needing to be at this time in my life. I also just I don't like to stay in one place for too long. I wanted to explore. I'm still young. I wanted to try a new city. I've lived in New York. I've lived in Boston. It was time for a change in location. But part of what I like about working remotely is it does give me a little more leeway to work for a couple different companies. As I kind of mentioned before, or as I'm sure you guys have gathered, I have a lot of different interests. And I've always struggled with, what do I want to do when I grow up? And I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. But this, I think, really working remotely gives me the opportunity to keep learning and growing and just really like working and grinding as much as I need to in the different fields that I'm passionate about. It's less restricting. Also, I find I'm an introvert, so sometimes being around people all day can take a lot of energy out of me. So I sometimes just find that I'm more efficient working from home and putting all of my energy into work that I'm doing. And that also helps me kind of balance working for multiple companies, is having that extra energy and not commuting. That is so much time I get back in my day. That's like 2 hours extra that I have to do extra work.
Did you have to kind of vouch for that type of arrangement? I mean, I can imagine that it was not unusual, but maybe not, super traditional as well. Were there any concerns that you had to address up front with your respective employers?
So the great thing about user interviews is that they're a completely remote company.
Right.
So as far as the remote was concerned, that wasn't a problem with them. That's how they all function.
Yep.
And the nice thing was, like, I had been working for them as a sales intern a while before, while I was still at Drift. So I already had a feel for the company. I really enjoyed the company's mission. I'm really passionate about building better products to help people. So that part wasn't as much of a concern. They do know that I do lots of video work for other companies, but they know that also I will put in the 40 hours a week. I will make sure everything gets done above and beyond as it needs to be. I hit my numbers, I surpass them if I can, and making sure that making sure that I can kind of balance everything as a priority was the big thing with that. And with Rebel Motion, I was doing some part-time work with them while I was still at Drift. So since I had entered remotely, when I told them, hey, I don't want to move to New York City right now, can I still keep doing work for you guys, but even more work, but remotely, they said, okay, because I think a lot of it is having proven my work before, and showing, hey, this is something I can handle. And that's kind of how I got them to let me do it.
I think that is so fascinating. I mean, because sometimes I was just talking to a friend the other day about something unrelated, but it was like, it was a choice between this or that, right? And we always end up in this conundrum in life where we have to choose between two things that we really want but seem to come in conflict with each other. But it's like, why not both? Like, why not, think outside of the box? And I think that right now, like in our peer group, I think a lot of us, and just a lot of people in general in today's age, we all have such, varied interests. And I think that you can you can miss out on a lot if you stay in one place for too long, or just alone in that one area, and you're getting so much exposure, and that's, it's elevating your growth, it seems like, by you working in these different capacities, and doing it kind of on your own terms in alignment with your values.
Plus, a part of it too is I think I learned such different things from each company that it's really beneficial to the other company that I'm learning one thing in one space and bringing it into the other space. Even like, actually, my favorite example is we're releasing this video tomorrow, actually. I just created a really awesome brand video for user interviews. And because of what I was learning doing the video stuff at Rebel Motion, I was able to take that and apply it to user interviews. And the same thing on the flip side, the stuff with the more traditional marketing that I learn at user interviews and more typical blog content at user interviews, I can take that and bring it into Rebel Motion. And I think that learning things from different industries and different spaces is just extremely beneficial.
Yeah. I think it's so fascinating how the nature of work is changing. It feels like just yesterday, remote work was such a dirty word.
Mm-hmm.
For those that don't know, Close.io is a fully remote company. We're a big family of introverts, cheering each other and loving on each other, alone in our own homes virtually. So that's how we operate. And it's awesome. And I think now, like, you try to go to the grocery store at awkward times during the day because you work remotely to avoid the crowds. And there's so many people there. And it seems like everybody is working remotely now. And I think it's just a matter of time before so many people are doing more freelancer or working multiple different projects like you do, and still thriving and progressing. And I think at one point, maybe long ago, freelancing was also in a way a dirty word or just unfamiliar. But now it's more about people realizing that there's a way to for their career to be not just aligned with their values, but also for those to work together symbiotically.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I don't know about how you felt about this, but I've felt, and I've read a lot about this too, is that I think people that work remotely feel this sense of like freedom and agency and self-efficacy that like really lets them put even more energy into their work, because they feel like, okay, this is my choice. I'm doing this on my time, in my space. And if I have to go to a doctor's appointment for 30 minutes or go to the supermarket for a hot sec, that's okay. I'm going to come back and I'm going to do my work 10 times better than I may have if I were in an office.
Right. And we always joke about those perks that you get to have by not having to, commute somewhere or like be in a physical other office. I'm not sure if you've also read the book by 37 Signals, who literally wrote the book on remote work. It's called Remote.
Wow. Oh no, I haven't read that, but I'll read it.
It will. Well, now that you've been living and breathing it, I think in reading that book, it'll be kind of like preaching to the choir to you, but I think it'll just affirm and confirm so many of the insights and inklings that you've had so far, because they incorporated some data and some trends analysis. And it was one of the first books that I was given at Close.io to read. And it's an amazing resource for everybody out there who does remote or freelance work. And yes, that sentiment there is that, you're invigorated with more agency and energy, which feeds in directly to how effective you are as an employee.
Good. So I didn't make that up.
No, not at all. You're spot on.
Great.
So I did want to ask, what do you think are some crossovers or differences between your craft in sales and your craft in marketing?
Yeah, so I love this question, especially because when I first started in marketing, I was new to the space in general, and I kept hearing about this thing with the war between sales and marketing, and having like been on both sides of it, I didn't understand what the war was about because they seemed so similar.
Like, what that was all about?
They seem so similar. It just seems to me the main difference is with marketing, you have to get you're trying to cast like that broader net, and like creating content that's maybe a little more general, or that's just something authentic and genuine. And for me, marketing is more about content. And I think it's just the different ways of communicating. So sales, I feel it's more of a one-on-one way of communicating. It's all about how to talk to a person really directly, and how to really engage with a person and understand what it is that individual human being is having trouble with. What is their biggest pain point of the day? How can you connect with them on that level? And then how can you help them? It's more about being a than anything else, I think. But on the marketing side, you kind of have to see, okay, what are the other mediums that I can connect with someone in that same way? Because as a marketer, it's harder to talk to someone, to like people individually all the time, because you need to kind of you need to get their attention before they're ready for that one-on-one conversation, which is what sales takes care of.
Right. I was thinking about this the other day, and I kind of felt like, just if you think of, you know, a human being or a professional, like you as a professional as the product, I think marketing is more of those interactions that add up over time. So you're going to meet people at networking events. You're going to have a LinkedIn, a Twitter, an Instagram, a Facebook. Like you're going to have a personal brand across all of these mediums over time. The actual job interview or the actual, you know, coffee meetup that you have with a potential employer is more like that direct sales conversation, where there's going to be a conversation right in front of you in real time that requires a bit more navigation and a little bit more just it's more of a direct thing that's happening, you know, human to human, rather than us kind of all coexisting on these various virtual mediums.
Yeah, it's the here and the now.
Right. Exactly. Is there anything that I haven't asked you yet that you'd like to talk about or share or leave our audience with?
Yes. I want to talk a little bit about B2B marketing content videos, because this is, I think, has been my biggest takeaway. And I was talking to some other marketers about this the other day too. This has been my biggest takeaway working in marketing and also working in video, is you see 1,000,001 of those really, really boring animated videos with like music in the background, and you know what I mean? You know the B2B videos that I'm talking about?
It's like the cheesy, like kind of super happy with the do.
Yeah. And it's like, here's what our product does. They're usually about 3 minutes long, and no one watches them all the way through. They just don't. And we're living in a world where people love genuine, authentic content that makes them happy. So I guess word of advice, or like the way I see the world of B2B marketing and sales even changing, is make content that resembles something closer to your favorite TV show than a commercial, because I think commercials are broken. That's very much like my mission and what I'm trying to do at Rebel Motion. And that's very much even what I try to do every day as a content creator at User Interviews. And it's funny because I think the two kind of intertwine at User Interviews. Like the mission that I'm passionate about there is like helping people and giving people what they want. And I think that can apply to content, is that people don't necessarily want to hear your 3-minute animated cheesy video. They want something funny that really connects with them about the problem. And I think that narrative storytelling is the way to do that. And I think that getting creative is something that companies should really consider, because I've really seen it work, and brand is everything. Anyone can steal your product. No one can steal your brand.
Right. And I think authenticity has become such a buzzword, but I think like it's becoming, I think it's become something where people can tell the difference between real authenticity and authenticity for the sake of passing off as authentic. And I think in the past couple of months to maybe the past year, we've seen a huge shift in media becoming so much more real. And I think that is awesome.
I think it's wonderful.
Yes. So where can people find you and connect with you, Danielle?
Yeah, okay. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I post lots of LinkedIn videos. I love it because I love video. You can find me, Danielle Hope Diamond is my name. You can find me on Twitter at dhopediamond. You can also go to rebel-motion.com and you can talk to me through the drift widget. I love talking to people.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's where you can find me.
We'll include all that down below. Thank you so much for being on the Close.io Women in Sales series.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Hey, did you enjoy this episode? I'd love to hear your thoughts and suggestions. If you have questions that you'd like our guests to answer, or if you know of a woman in sales that we should feature, email me, Rebecca@close.io. That's with 1 B and 2 C's. And if you enjoyed this episode, got value out of it, got inspired, share it with a friend. There's a link in the description where you can also find show notes. And you can follow this series by subscribing to Close.io's YouTube channel, iTunes, SoundCloud, and various other podcast apps that you might already use. See you guys on the next one.